it up. She was.
Oh no,
You have to
I
take it up.
understand that. We've been. She was ready half an hour ago. You know.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We have our last keynote speaker here. Can you pronounce your name?
Which part?
Your name?
Okay, that's DESNA,
Desna.
yeah, and then WHAANGA, so that WH is an F. That was like
Oh,
far,
just say Desna. Can
yeah.
I just say Desna? All right. Sorry? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. So, we're here for the last keynote presentation with the title Sentient Place Living Ancestor Landscapes by DESNA. So, DESNA?
Is that working? It is. Cool. Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui. Is that working properly? It is, eh? Can everybody hear me? Hey, awesome. Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui, ko rogo mai wahine me kakangunu me ngā te pāhuera ngā iwi, ko ngai tahu matawhaiti tōku hapu, no mahia hau, ko tai porutu tōku kāinga tūturu, ko DESNA WHAANGA-SCHOLLUM tōku ingoa. My name is DESNA WHAANGA-SCHOLLUM. I'm from Aotearoa, New Zealand. My tribes, my iwi, are rogo mai wahine, kakangunu and ngā te pāhuera, and my clan or hapu is ngai tahu matawhaiti. I hail from Te Mahi Mai Tāwhiti, which is on the east coast of the North Island of Aotearoa, in a wee peninsula that's the centre of the universe. I'm really sorry for you guys that you live so far away, but you know, I'm sure you make up for it with wit. So it's amazing to be here with you guys today. My deep apologies about our other keynote speaker. Unfortunately, he missed his plane, and so he's not going to be able to join us. So we won't be able to hear their sage words today. However, the good thing is that we get to go home early tonight after I've stopped babbling. So, hey! So, yeah, I have been on a pretty amazing trip to be able to join you here today, visiting a lot of First Nations around the world, and hearing about their journeys, their work, the difference that they're making in all of their places. So yeah, I'm feeling fairly humbled and overloaded with a lot of good Māori or energy and whakapapa or genealogy from my travels. So kia ora. As I said earlier, ko tai porutu tōku kāinga tūturu. So this is my home in Aotearoa. You can just see a tiny little house there up above the point in the roof. The reef is called tai porutu, which translates to the sound of the sea booming on the rocks. My ancestors have occupied that place for 21 generations. It is one of the original landing spots for the voyaging waka, which brought a lot of the moana nui a kiwa, or tangata whenua and tangata moana, people of the sea and people of the land, to Aotearoa. I'm fortunate enough to still be able to occupy our land, and we have our burial grounds there with our ancestors since the Takitimu Waka. We also have our ancestral occupation site and our ancestral places to gather kaimoana, aka seafood. So these guys are telling me that your guys' beaches are better than ours, and sorry, but you know. So this is Te Mahi Mai Tāwhiti, the peninsula. My place is about halfway down on the right hand side of the peninsula that you can see sticking out down the bottom there. The original tohunga or wise person, I guess head honcho on the Takitimu Waka or voyaging canoe, was Ruāwharo. So he's 21 generations before me. He had a university, or as we call it, a wānanga. This is pre-colonisation. That was on Waikawa, which is an island off the end of the Mahia Peninsula. So a really significant piece of ancestral land for us. As I said, I'm fortunate enough to still be able to live on our land. That's pretty unusual in Aotearoa. The majority of land, of course, has been confiscated by the Crown. Sorry for anybody here who's a fan of England. I'm just going to say I'm not. They've caused us no end of issues, but I won't focus necessarily on the deficit today. I just wanted to share some of the amazing things that we've been able to do with regenerating our knowledge, particularly since the 1960s. So these are two quite significant tipuna or ancestors for me. The ancestor with the tāmoko or the tattoos on his face is Ihaka Whanga or Whanga the First. So I'm 6 generations down from him. His third wife was Te Paerere Kaipoke, who is from another iwi up the coast. Ihaka Whanga was born on Waikawa at the end of Te Mahia Mai Tāwhiti. His original name was Whanga, and later in his life he took on the name Ihaka. He's significant at home in how we understand our occupation, like our place at Taiporutu. Whanga lived there. He was a rangatira, so chieftain line, and through this heritage we understand all of our land connections. We're very fortunate in terms of the whāngas that we're still able to occupy a lot of our places. As I said, I grew up on mine and I know where our other tribal territories are. So through doing that, I've been able to understand my place in the world and how it is that I connect to everybody else, and also my responsibilities to our people. There are 2 other wives before Te Paia. They're insignificant. Te Paia was awesome. My wahine or female woman ancestor was known for her battle prowess. So when Whanga fell in a battle with the Crown, Te Paerere Kaipoke picked up the charge and led the rest of the battle and consequently won that. On the other side is Tota Hokianga with my grandmother, Te Wai Whanga, or Te Wai Hokianga originally, on his knee. Tota was a tohunga, so I spoke earlier of the Ruawharo, who was the wise man on the waka, or the canoe Takitimu. In 1907 there was a Tohunga Suppression Act in Aotearoa, which was supposedly put together to as a measure against the kind of practices that were theoretically bad sort of health practices, because New Zealanders or Māori weren't dealing very well with the new diseases that the colonial settlers had brought in. But essentially they labelled our health systems and our knowledge systems and our connections to places legal and kind of, hodgepodge witchery type of thing. In doing so, even though it's said that it was for the betterment of our health, what it did was undermine our knowledge system. So tohunga, in terms of their well-being, which was their core responsibility, understood what it was that was wrong with you, or that was ailing people, by understanding their environment or understanding their family or understanding all of the influences within their life. So it was a holistic knowledge system. So it has been likened to shamanism, but it's much more, I don't like to homogenise across different cultures. All of our knowledges are specific to place. So our tohunga from home very much knew the territories that we were living in, our whakapapa, so our genealogy, and what it was that influenced our people, the types of foods that we would be eating, what are the stresses that are going on in our life. So it's an interconnected mode of knowledge. These are my two main lines within my whānau, within my family, and I guess, well, I know that the land confiscation and also the Tohunga Suppression Act have been two major attempts at wiping out Māori culture at home. They've had massive impact on us. Usual colonisation story of, like, you know, stripping out all of our land, stripping out the way that we go about occupying place, stripping out our knowledge systems, our reo, our language, trying to turn a matriarchal or balanced kind of society into something that's patriarchal, trying to turn land and the te taiao, the environment, which we very much respect, into an asset. And most of all, undermining our knowledge system by calling it paganism. We've been really fortunate in recent years that there's been a lot of sort of restoration of our knowledge systems, and so through doing that, our people, our younger generations, have been able to re-establish their identity. Te Matawa Maui here, for instance, as I spoke earlier, the original voyaging waka that came to New Zealand, so 21 generations ago, were double-hulled waka. These actually sailed around all of the Pacific, or Moana Nui a Kiwa, which, as we all know, because we're super geeks, you know, that's half of the world. So our one is called Te Matawa Maui, which is essentially the draw of Maui's grandmother. So Maui is one of our eponymous ancestors, and you'll find stories about Maui all over the Pacific. Unfortunately, Disney had to go at butchering his story lately, and you might have seen the animated movie called Moana. He was much cooler than that. But we do have a shared story, and in recent generations, Heck Busby who's a Māori navigator at home, has worked with the Hawaiians to be able to regenerate the knowledge that we have around our voyaging waka. So there's 7 to 9 of them that are now around the Pacific and all of the different sort of indigenous islands, and they regularly sail around that and sort of disprove the fact that, disprove this, what was said to be a fact, that we kind of fell across New Zealand on accident, starving, etc. These guys are amazing sailors. They don't use any energy. They travel by the stars, and by being able to read the tides, being able to read the way that the ocean moves, and where rain is, and where the whales are, and where the birds are, etc. So it's an ancient knowledge. The waka, the double-hulled waka, the technology for them is essentially what is now based on catamarans and sort of racing waka. What's your English name for it? Anyway, boats. Amazing knowledge, and I've had the brilliant experience of being able to spend a bit of time with these guys. I'm hideously uncoordinated, unfortunately, so I just run around my camera, but I've learned a lot with these guys about our stars and the way that we work with the sea. Some of my fundamental part of my practice, or what has changed my practice actually, is our Treaty of Waitangi claims at home. So in 1840, many chiefs, or the rangatira of Aotearoa, signed an agreement with the Crown that we would be able to work alongside each other and acknowledge each other's own sovereignty, but find ways to look after our respective peoples in a partnership. So obviously, as we know with the British, they were lying. So we've spent quite a bit of time with treaty claims recently, say in the last 20 years or so, going through a process of having restitution and having a tiny, if we're lucky, sort of 1% back of what it is that we lost, resetting up health systems, setting up kura kaupapa, so schools where we get to learn our language, which is fundamental, as we all know, to our knowledge systems, and reconnecting with our landscapes. So my role in this is again, with my camera, running around behind my tribe, my hapu, my clan, but thankfully employed by the Crown to actually record our stories. So what we decided to do with our clan was take everybody out to our sites of significance where we could and share our stories on place, which makes so much difference, because if you're just learning the names, they're really abstract, and if you go out there with everybody and they share their stories on place, it's got a lot more energy. You learn a hell of a lot better. And I'll never forget, you can see the kaumātua, the elder there that's laughing, the grin on Walter's face for all of the sites that we visited together that he'd heard about since he was a child and never been able to visit. So regardless of the way that the treaty claim actually came out, the fact that we've been able to do that research together and connect to our sites of significance has really changed the way that I see the world. Now when I'm going home, it's walking or driving, etc., through a landscape where I can see all the names of the places and know how we occupied them and what types of food we had there, and it changes my entire sense of place. It's really given me that concept of being tangata whenua, or being people of the land and people of the moana, the ocean, and given it life to be able to understand our places as sentient places, that they carry history and that they have their own ecosystems, and that the way that we used to, as Māori, occupy place was very much as a part of that ecosystem. So inherently that's taught me respect. Within the treaty claims too, obviously we look at things like rongoa. So rongoa, again, commonly kind of understood as like medicinal healing, but can mean the types of food that you eat, or kind of plants that we use for weaving, or plants that we use for, as I said, healing, or plants that you might use for carving, sort of all of our various different uses. So finding out the names of those, and also being involved in regeneration projects where we're replanting some of our ancestral sites on our land where we've been able to have that back or maintain small parts of it. This particular plant, the pingao, is used a hell of a lot by my cousins who are 5 generations of amazing weavers who intimidate the hell out of me. I paint with acrylic because I don't have patience. They are amazing weavers and this is one of their taonga species. So again, it just had it's given an intimacy to the landscape that perhaps I didn't quite have before. This is whare nui, or marae. I'm not sure how many of you guys have been to the centre of the universe. New Zealand? Not so much? Oh, good. There's hope for the rest of you. But this marae, if you have been to Aotearoa, you'll notice that it's it's a little bit run down in comparison to other ones that we have. So by visiting this place as part of our treaty claims, we were looking at how do we sort of regenerate some of these whare, or these community houses. Within them, they have they'll have carvings, as you can see in the back there, which represent our epistemology or ontology, our connection to place. The paintings which you see on the rafters there are considered our ancestors' ribs, and they'll often tell you stories about the plants, the people, the way that we occupy that particular place. And you can see some woven panels there as well. And those ones are called potama, and they're talking about education and our ascent to knowledge, or the eternal search for knowledge, that we're always learning. Unfortunately, this whare nui has been moved out to somewhere that it hasn't been looked after for quite a while, and there's been sheep through it, and the gangs and various people with their sort of not so great paint brushes, etc. But some of the styles that you can see there in terms of those paintings along the edge there, taniwha, so they're kaitiaki, which can be understood as essentially guardians or spirits of place. They kind of get used interchangeably. A taniwha can be seen as a spirit, but it's also a way of indicating that there's natural disasters in a particular place. So if an elder said that there's a taniwha there, they're not actually saying that there's a monster that's going to eat you. They're probably just telling you that there's really bad tides, underwater, cave or landslides or something along those sides. Of course, this was misinterpreted somewhat and still continues to be misinterpreted by some of the colonial structures at home. Yes, you are going to hear a lot of grievances about the colonial structures today, but can be misinterpreted as sort of like a fairy or paganism type of thing. However, again, it's a traditional ecological knowledge that's been using visual tools and audio tools, etc., to be able to pass them on to the next generation. So yeah, speaking to that point, one of our really important things that we do at home is support our artists. So our artists, as I said, can be weavers, they're painters, they're people that work with clay, uku. They are people that often know a hell of a lot about our particular environment and how to use that with their materials. So not only are they sharing stories, cultural expressions through their work, but they're also teaching about our relationship with these, with the materials of place, and they tell, looking at the different styles, you'll be able to, you can often tell where people are from, so there's sort of a continuity that connects you to place. So it's been really important for us at home to be able to run some exhibitions. My mother and I ran an exhibition for our tribe, for our iwi, for 18 years. It was originally on a marae, or a community centre, but due to development we had to move it to another place. So where we moved it was into the kind of rich batch or holiday home settlement, which in doing so actually ended up being a really good thing, because a lot of the people that would not, a lot of Pākehā or wealthy white people who were uncomfortable about going onto a marae really happily went to an exhibition when we had it at the local hall, and they learnt a lot about our culture, and so it was a connecting place. Yeah, so it's been a pretty phenomenal journey for us, and I compare this to some of the art galleries that I've worked with in governance positions in the cities around Aotearoa, and it's quite a different experience, because this mahi toi, or arts that as we understand it tends to be, you know, it's within the community, it's connected to place, it's not stuck in the white box, it's about like your genealogy and your connections to other people within the community, and it's inclusive as opposed to exclusive. So yeah, quite different ways of being able to understand it. Okay, so our knowledge system, mātauranga or mātauranga Māori, it's basically, because mātauranga is something that comes really quite specifically from tangata whenua in Aotearoa, it's a woven knowledge system. So this knowledge system actually encompasses ethics, it encompasses things like weaving together our relationships, and it encompasses things like knowing a particular way of knowing place. So it's not only what is known, but how do you know it? So it's inherently tied in with ethics, in that you are going to continue to obviously always pursue knowledge. However, there's ethics around that, how it is used, where it's used, why it's used, and your responsibility to the next generation coming along to be able to share that in the generations past that you're building on their knowledge, and so you acknowledge them at all points. So our structure around that is whakapapa. So whakapapa is, does everybody want to practice saying that with me? 1, 2, 3. Whakapapa. Whoop whoop. Thank you. So that's the link between the land and our tipuna, or our ancestors, who are its custodians or guardians. Whakapapa is both our genealogical kind of concept of the world, but it's also the way that we understand our connection to everything else. So it's not kind of a family tree, it's more of a cyclic model. So everything is connected, as we all know from Douglas Adams, but also the Māori thought that first. So whakapapa is the way that we understand our connections to everybody that's been before us and coming after us, but it also means our kin relationship with everything that is on Papatuanuku, so Earth Mother. Our tipuna, or our ancestors, exercise their function as kaitiaki, or guardians, by understanding their connections within that whakapapa. So if you know where you come from, you know who it is that you're responsible to, and also where it is that you're going to head it in the next direction. Again, it's about sort of binding things together, having responsibility rather than rights, and having respect for each other at all points as well. As per the slide, I'm not going to read out all the bullet points, but essentially it links the past with the present with the future. So again, it's that cyclic model. Oh, I didn't talk to you about tikanga, but there's another slide on that. So tikanga, I'm just going to quickly have a kōrero about that. Tikanga is our ethics. So that's protocol, which is based on our traditions, and it's based on our whakapapa, and it's based on our ancestors and the way that they understood place. However, it always adapts to the next generation. So this is a living body of knowledge and a living body of ethics. Very recently in Aotearoa, New Zealand, it's been understood as actually its own system of law, which is quite fundamental to us, given that we've still got this lurking Westminster habit that we really need to get rid of. it's a understanding or a protocol that exists of place. So kaitiakitanga, I think, is really the big one that that I wanted to have a kōrero with you guys about today. Kōrero means speak, sorry. Forgive me if I flick back and forth between those. Kaitiakitanga is used in our Resource Management Act at home, kind of understood as a way of being a guardian or based around conservation. However, kaitiakitanga has actually got 6 different aspects to it. There's spirituality, there are things that are really valuable to us, there is the guardianship ethic, there's also a connection to place and energy. So it's much more kind of a holistic way of being able to understand the world, as opposed to in that you are a part of the world, part of the ecosystem, rather than seeing humans as discrete from the environment, as unnatural things. So within that holistic way of understanding the world, this gives us the obligation arising from that whakapapa, or the kin relationship that I spoke about earlier, to look after everything that is around us. One of the ways that we can understand respect within that concept is that we actually respect places. That if we understand all places, so the earth, the sky, everything, ngahere, the forest, the beaches, etc., that these are all part of ecosystems, that these are living entities, then we have respect for place. And so us humans, as the youngest entities on this planet, have the responsibility to look after all of our tuakana, or our elders, or those that have come before us. So our, I guess our respect within our communities is based around our ability to be able to uphold the dignity of our places that we live within. Tikanga, as I was speaking about earlier, is our ethics and values system. Pretty much everything that we do has tikanga around it. And if we don't have tikanga, then you're basically not sort of following Māori protocol. It's not so much a rule book as something that kind of keeps us safe and that keeps us accountable to each other. So it's less about policing, more about nurturing, more about respect. It's the way that we understand our connection to place, as I said, and our ethics and values to those that are around us. So you're not moving through the world in a sort of an autonomous manner, or that you've just kind of popped up and then once you're dead, you're dead. You've kind of got responsibility to your ancestors and the next generations that are coming after you. So through looking after place, this enhances your mana or your authority, and that allows you, or you do that through having tikanga, ethics and values in everything that you do. So essentially we're saying that our reality is holistic, and that humanity and nature are part of the same system. So humans and nature, as far I think we've got about 14 different atua or gods or deities, and humans and everything within the forest or te ao turo, the natural world, is under an atua or an ecosystem that's called tāne. So that means that everything is woven together, and we have responsibility to that particular ecosystem. I've been looking into, with a team of researchers, some of the concepts around our different atua, or what are considered deities, and trying to understand them better and move them from that God complex, which a lot of the colonial sort of understandings have come along with Indigenous cultures, and they see us having respect for place, and they've kind of misinterpreted this as gods. So we're thinking that we have respect for these different ecosystems doesn't mean that we actually think that they're gods. It just means that we acknowledge that we are smaller than them, and we have responsibilities to them, and that we should look after them. So again, going to that connected world. And key to all of this is our relationships. So it's less about the end product and more about the how did we get there, and has the way that we've gotten there nurtured those people, or nurtured that place, or nurtured the kaupapa or the philosophy or the project that we're working on at that particular point. It's more about how do we move through this world in a respectful, dynamic, interesting, interconnected kind of way, and have joy in all of that experience, rather than just sort of looking to the end product. That So, it's a fundamental shift when you start thinking about that in terms of our connection with place. If we're not going to think of the earth as an asset that we can mine and sell and sort of talk about mitigating, rather we talk about being in relationship with it, then you start to see some of the laws that have come through in Aotearoa recently, such as the Living Entity Law, which now looks after Whanganui Awa, which is a river at home, has been recognised as a living sentient being and has its own legislation around it. There's also Te Urawera, which is a lake and a forest area with a particular tribe that has also been recognised as a living entity. So some of the legislation is catching up to the way that Indigenous see the world at home. It's changed, well, hopefully it's slowly started to change the way that we all respond to place. Unfortunately, most of the time, obviously, we kind of need these laws to make sure that everybody behaves themselves, because apparently we don't know how to do that without some laws, and somebody's got to be a police, police that sort of thing. It's good to see some of the legislation kind of catching up, and I know that there's been a lot of interest internationally in that fundamental shift, and also thinking about how we might be able to transfer or sort of, resculpt and use that tool in other places. When we're talking about relationships, the big thing for us is, of course, is balance. So the relational processes, everything that you do is less, it's not about mitigation if you look at sort of resource management or use. It's about what can I do that would leave the place that I'm living in a better state than I found it. So it's a respectful way of being able to interact with your place. That changes things really fundamentally from what the Resource Management Act currently does. And it's a really important dynamic to have, particularly when, the world's not looking too great at the moment. Within that concept, our temporality as well is intergeneration. So we have this concept called te kore, te pō, te ao marama, which is the nothingness, and then there's 17 stages of night where things are kind of being are moving around, or ideas are being formed, or things are interacting with each other, through to te ao marama, which is the point of light. So even though that sounds linear, what it's understood is that we are always within that cycle, and that our tikanga lines that we have are the things that hold that together. When you look at ecosystems, that makes sense. It's not kind of like this start to finish. Everything is going to be recycled. So going back to that concept of whakapapa, through that kind of understanding of place, basically we're related to everything on this planet. Except for, I'm not related to Coke. I'm sorry about whoever it is that put that on the table. It wasn't me. That's not related to anybody. But the rest of us are related through a kin group or a cosmological family. So us, the birds, the bees, the trees, the fish, the whales. Not Donald Trump, he's also in there with Coke. But through this lens, with all of us being related, we're all connected, and we all have a responsibility to each other to make sure that we look after each other. It's not about like he who has the most toys when he dies wins, because obviously that's a bit of a flawed concept. It's more about how do we make sure that we're nurturing place, and that we're going to, as I said, leave it in a healthier state than what it was when we arrived on this planet. Our looking after the environment is obviously massive for Indigenous. And I know that's an understanding that everybody has shared, well, so far anyway, on my wee trip around the world. So one of the projects that I've been working on lately, looking at our current situation of remote sensing technology and artificial intelligence, and how we might better use the kind of data or different remote sensing tech, etc., that's in New Zealand to be able to understand what's going on in the environment. The way that we've designed this is looking at those atua, or those deities that I was talking about earlier, and kind of thinking about their behaviours. So how is it like, what are the ancestral stories that we know about these kind of atua, about these deities, and the way that they behave with each other, and what are the tikanga or moral codes that might be within those, but also how do they interact with other atua or deities within the environment. By aligning the remote sensing technology that we have and trying to fit them in with those atua or those deity domains, and then from that sort of looking at different things that we want to know about the environment, connecting all of these things together, we're seeking to build a kaitiakitanga intelligence platform. So with this, it's sort of putting tech in the hands of Māori, of Indigenous at home, to be able to better be able to perform their function as kaitiaki. So at the moment, you've kind of got like climate change systems, or you've got global earth monitoring, or there's a handful of them, climate projections, earth systems models, those dotty ones in the middle. Those systems are already available. But through looking at that broader kind of picture of how it is that our atua behave, what we're seeking to do is develop different algorithms that are based upon mātauranga Māori. Obviously, initially we're looking for this to be able to support the kaitiaki or the Māori that have sort of that are working within the environment or have environmental assets, so that they can better deliver on the way it is that we understand that the world should operate. So hopefully this would also influence other areas. I guess, you know, we don't really know. I'm sure you guys are maybe bored or interested or, you know, on the edge about artificial intelligence and how quickly it's moving. So this project's only been going for about a year, and honestly I can't believe how far the tech has moved in the last year. It's just crazy. So I guess the proposition for us is that we need to get in there and we need to be able to understand what the potential of it is, and also look at that we can drive the way that it is being developed through mātauranga Māori, or through knowledge systems that have ethics that connect us to place, and that are driven by a responsibility or care for the environment, and also driven by relationships, by care for each other, as we have seen with some other examples Facebook, that some of the algorithms that have been perpetuated around the planet haven't really been doing us any good. So it's coming. We knew this because Ani and Keanu told us about it in the 90s. But the way that it's going to be formed is going to be influenced by our thinking. And it's really good to have a look in these moments about what are the gaps, who's missing out on the discussion at the moment, who isn't involved, who's not in the room, you know, and why are they not being, or how could they be included in the development of AI, because it is going to change our world. Definitely, you know, within about 10 years this is going to be completely different, and we hope that the new world that it might shape, or it might become the kind of tool that is something that cares for people and that regenerates people and that regenerates place. Hopefully Elon Musk has buggered off to a different planet by then. And yeah, that we've been in amongst and sort of thought about the way that we all think within this room. If you're doing, you know, critical heritage studies, then I think that you care about place, and I think you care about people. So how would we design those algorithms so that they're connected? So that kind of brings me to the end of my burbling, which is good because it looks like I've been burbling for quite a while. The next stop on my journey is going to be at a digital conference, ICEA, where I'll be working with a lot of artists to discuss things like Indigenous protocol around artificial intelligence, and how might we sort of, you know, think about things like wairua, like spirit, like Māori, like energy, and connection to place. What is the potential there, rather than being fearful of the way that we're heading? As artists, I think that we've got a lot to give to any of these discussions because of the boldness of the creatives that I work with that are willing to explore different ideas. Within this video, this is Tane Mete, who is one of my tribal cousins. He's a choreographer and dancer for Black Grace, which was an international Māori dance company, sort of 80s and 90s. We've gathered at home, and the dancers were doing sort of impromptu performances on different areas that are sites of significance around home, around Mahia. And the reason for that was, how do we actually connect our bodily knowledge? So the way that we move, our energy, and reconnecting that with place, so that it moves out of only being your mind, ngaro, into your heart, into your body, and your energetics of connecting with place. So it's an exploration of the different ways that we know place and that we connect to place, and how do we understand our ancestors. It's us. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions? Reactions?
Dumbfounded.
Okay, we have questions, yes.
Just in relation to the AI conversation at the end there, which is really interesting and completely relevant, are you having any conversations with any of the big tech industries which are actually driving AI? And here would be the capital of that in the world at the moment.
We've only just kind of started that, so it's been a one-year project, and so far our team, which is they're all Aotearoa New Zealand researchers, have looked at all the different opportunities that for data that we have in New Zealand. Kind of the largest tech that we've got at the moment is Rocket Lab, which is launching satellites, unfortunately off the end of the peninsula, so about 17 k's down the road from my ancestral place that I live. Teamed up with the US military. So there has been some discussion with those kind of tech places, but we haven't looked to the larger networks yet. We've looked at drones, obviously, put cameras on the bottom of planes, so teamed up with some of the commercial flights so that we can get data across different areas of Aotearoa, because normally you have to be able to pay for a personal flight to do that. And what we're looking at is building like networks of different Māori entities so that they can work together to be able to afford a larger platform. So we've kind of got to that point in being able to design the system and had to talk to all of the different iwi or tribes that might be, keen to take this up. But next steps would be, so how do we team up with tech? I've really randomly but interestingly been invited to speak at the IAC, or the International Astronautical Conference, I hate acronyms, Federation, the dudes that are doing stuff in space anyway, in Milan in October, and so be meeting a few more of the tech heads while we're there. But if you've got advice, come and nab your number. Yes, please, that would be great.
Again together for her. Thank you very much.